Hello everyone, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis. Welcome to today's video. Today it's going to be a Warhammer 40,000 theory video, and the question comes from a comment on our last theory video by Izonka, or Izonka, however you want to pronounce it. They ask whether Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, could possibly be redeemed, or whether he's too far gone and is therefore beyond redemption. Now, me being me, once I started thinking about Magnus, I started wondering about some of the other Traitor Primarchs, and so we arrive at today's video. Are any of the Traitor Primarchs redeemable? We just expanded it a little bit. We'll be looking at all 9 of the Traitor Primarchs, both dead and alive. I know, suspension of disbelief is necessary here, but we must apply a few conditions if we wish to answer this question. We have to assume 3 things. 1. The Imperium is willing to take back the redeemed Primarchs into their fold. No questions asked. 2. The demonic nature of some of these Primarchs, primarily Angron, Magnus, Mortarion, in fact, pretty much everyone who's still alive, is not going to be an issue. And 3, the Traitor Primarchs could somehow break free from servitude to chaos and not simply be agents of the ruinous powers on their return to the Imperium. They must actually be redeemed. With all of that said, let's try and redeem ourselves some Primarchs. I want to start off by dismissing one Primarch as irredeemable immediately, and that's Angron. Angron was mad at the Emperor right from the outset. When the Emperor found him, he offered him a place in the Legion as Astartes, but Angron refused, and so the Emperor teleported him away from his army on Nuceria. Angron never forgave the Emperor for that, and that made him more than willing to betray him and fight with Horus instead. Cost him 7 captains at the same time. Add that to the Butcher's Nails and 10,000 years in service to Khorne, and it's pretty safe to say that Angron will not be going back to the Imperium, ever. His was a tragic tale. It may even be worthy of forgiveness in the eyes of some Imperials. But returning to the fold, which is the question we're actually trying to answer, it's impossible in my opinion. However, there may be some hope for Mortarion, who also had some pretty early beef with the Emperor. When the Emperor arrived on Mortarion's homeworld, he made a deal. If Mortarion could kill his adopted father, then the Emperor would leave Barbarous to it, but if not, the Imperium would claim the planet's fealty. As we know, Mortarion failed due to the noxious air, and so he ended up kneeling to the Emperor. Willingly, but he did. However, he always seemed to find more companionship with and loyalty to Horus as opposed to the Emperor, which certainly didn't help, and he also thought the Emperor kind of denied him his heritage and inheritance by not letting him take Barbarous for himself. Add that to a chaos-corrupted first captain in Callus Typhon, and his choice to betray the Imperium was simple. He also saw the Emperor as a hypocrite regarding Psykers. Although he had rightfully outlawed Psykers during the Council of Nicaea, he continued to wield the arcane arts for himself. And yet, the traitor forces used the energies of the warp even more liberally than the Imperials, and in greater numbers, and Mortarion came to realise he had no friends who would stand with him against the sorcery. I mean, he tried with Jagtai Khan, but he failed epically. Eventually, though, he was actually forced to embrace the powers of the warp in order to become his own master, until Callus Typhon screwed him over again. As a result, the question of Mortarion's redemption is a difficult one, because while it appears he has absolutely no hope, he actually might. He may have hated the psychic power of the traitors, but he now welcomes it, and so he may or may not regard the Emperor as such a hypocrite anymore. Also, with Horus dead and the Emperor out of the equation in turn on the Golden Throne, the 2 people who actually swayed his betrayal in terms of loyalties are no longer a factor. But he did seem rather disillusioned with the Imperium when he betrayed it, and its stagnation since the heresy cannot have helped that. So I rate Mortarion's redemption chances as low at best, maybe a 2 out of 10. Next up, let's look at the other 2 initial Traitor Primarchs, Fulgrim and of course Horus. Horus we can knock out pretty fast. His jealousy of the Emperor is the main root for his betrayal, and one would assume that unless he was offered authority over the entire Imperium, he would never be coming back. He'd probably just have to be like, okay, you won, fine, come back. Not a chance. After all, the yoke of the High Lords of Terror would likely be nearly as oppressive as the Emperor's given enough time. Fulgrim is a little more interesting, in that he was won over to chaos pretty much by Horus on his own, even though he tried to stop Horus to begin with. Well done, Fulgrim. However, he seems to be one of those Primarchs who most openly embraced the corruptions of chaos once he'd fallen to it, and he now seeks the most rapturous pleasures he can find. As a result, being monitored by the Imperium and answerable to Terror again would be something he would absolutely loathe. Therefore, Fulgrim joins Horus and Angron in the pile of non-redeemable Primarchs. Whilst we're here, we're also going to look at Lorgar. This guy is probably the most far gone of all the Traitor Primarchs. He instigated the Horus heresy from a long time out, and he willingly entreated with demons long before the galactic civil war that made them more common. He also showed no remorse in betraying the Emperor, even after war was declared, which is something Fulgrim actually did do. He's also responsible for Angron's ascension to demonhood, and while he's been inactive in the material realm since the heresy, pretty much, the possibility of redemption since his enlightenment by chaos is practically zero. So Lorgar, you can go and join Horus and co in the non-redeemable section. Ta-da! Now things get a little bit more interesting. We're going to go into Conrad Curze and Alpharius. Let's start with Night Haunter. Curze and the Night Lords were never truly under the Imperium's control to begin with, always brutal killers who committed untold atrocities in the Great Crusade. Curze even left Rogel Dawn bleeding and unconscious when Dawn had confronted him on a vision he'd had, which was actually about the heresy, and then slaughtered the Imperial fist guarding him whilst his brother Primarchs debated how to deal with him before escaping. As a result, Curze was always probably far too unstable to remain in the Imperium for long, or to return to it in the future. Probably he'd have been one of the Primarchs who was destroyed along with the 2nd and 11th, if that's what happened to them. But he and his legion never fell to chaos either. They followed Horus, yes. They wanted the Emperor dead, probably. But Curze and his legion fought only for what they believed in, well, certainly Curze did, apparently evidenced by Curze's choice to let the Khalidus assassin Shen kill him. Also, it's always seemed to be referenced that the Night Lords paid lip service to Chaos and the Ruinous Powers, but that's about it. So, would Curze rejoin the Imperium? It's unlikely, and just like Horus and Fulgrim, it would probably only be with no risk of censure or control, so he'd be coming back for all the wrong reasons. As for Alpharius, well, he's Alpharius. It's almost impossible to predict this guy. However, there is evidence compiled by 40k Theories, which I'll put in the description below, that his twin brother Angron was in fact the first Grand Master of the Grey Knights, Janus. If this is true, we can draw two conclusions. One, a Traitor Primarch, as Angron basically was as Alpharius' twin, is capable of not only redemption, but also fully integrating back into the Imperium and taking a high-ranking role. Two, a member of the Alpha Legion has actually returned to the Loyalist fold and been accepted. Adding this up, combined with the fact the Alpha Legion, kind of like the Night Lords, never truly swore allegiance to Chaos, it gives Alpharius plenty of incentive to redeem himself and return. Or maybe he's actually Janus, who the heck knows. But he has been away for 10,000 years, assuming he wasn't in fact killed by Guilliman during the heresy as is believed. If he died, then just before dead Alpharius in the current state might stand a decent chance. If he survived, he may well have become too jaded and disillusioned with the Imperium to want to return. So he's in the maybe pile. Probably one of the better chances we've covered so far, whereas Curze's is in the region of Mortarions. Alright, time to get into our final two Primarchs, Perturabo and Magnus the Red. Perturabo is possibly the most interesting case that we're going to see, because Magnus's case is rather better documented. Perturabo's fall to chaos was hardly one that spoke of deep-rooted corruption within his heart within the Legion. Honestly, it's kind of cheap. In the run-up to the heresy, Perturabo's homeworld of Olympia suffered a rebellion, which the Iron Warriors of course responded to. Rather than simply put it down and restore Olympia to compliance as they'd done on so many other worlds, Perturabo and his sons purged the place, killing 5 million Olympians and enslaving the rest. Perturabo, seeing this as a genocide once he'd actually finished it, because he couldn't do that in the process, knew that the Emperor would almost certainly never forgive him for it, and yet Horus both forgave him and praised him for his dedication. As a result, when the heresy rolled around very soon after, Perturabo chose to follow Horus in his betrayal, and was rewarded on Istvan V with Ferrus Manus' hammer, Fordbreaker, after Fulgrim killed Manus. So basically Perturabo followed Horus because he was nice to him? Of course, Perturabo would go on to distinguish himself and be elevated to a Demon Prince of Chaos Undivided following the Iron Cage incident, but his reasoning for following Chaos to begin with is pretty flimsy. He's also been active on only 2 occasions that I could find following the Iron Cage incident and his ascension to demonhood. But does that mean he'd come back into the Imperial fold at this point? Well, he got his revenge on Dawn for his arrogance in the Iron Cage, basically broke the guy, And probably if the Emperor had actually shown him forgiveness, or at least been given the chance to show him forgiveness following Olympia, he may never have actually fallen to chaos at all. But, as I've said with Alpharius, it's been 10,000 years. I think Perturabo is at this point too far gone to be saved in all likelihood, though unlike maybe Mortarion, whose hope is on a thread at best, I'm not going to rule this one out just as much. I'd say he's got a shot, maybe 3 or 4 out of 10. And now we come to the source of this entire theory. Magnus. Is Magnus the Red worthy of redemption? In many ways, yes. He was willing to repent and even die when Horus came to find him on Prospero, only intervening right at the end of the battle with the wolves and almost not by choice. He was probably unknowingly manipulated by chaos right from the very beginning, from believing he halted the flesh change when he actually just stalled it, to trying to get enough power to stop Horus. He did also try to save Horus, which he failed to do, and then warned the Emperor of the upcoming betrayal, which ironically saw him branded as a traitor instead. Although he did throw his lot in with Horus after that, even though the Thousand Sons didn't fight in the heresy, he did appear with Horus via projection on Istvan V, which was the first time we saw a demonically possessed Fulgrim, which is interesting. All this would suggest, though, that he would willingly go back, given the chance, and if Russ hadn't actually invaded him or just arrested him, he may well have stayed loyal, gone on the Golden Throne, completed the Imperial webway, yada yada yada. But for the third time in 3 Primarchs, that was 10,000 years ago. He's now a demon prince, he's invaded the Fang at least once, having a very interesting word with a Russ statue that I'll come back to in a minute. His legion is now in ruins, thanks Ahriman, and any remorse or regret he may have had for his actions pre-heresy will more than likely have long since faded. Plus, in this aforementioned chat with Russ, he says this: "All things change, my brother. I'm not the same as I was, and you're... well, let us not mention where you are now." Implying that the way he thinks about things has changed, in terms of his, viewpoint on the world. Or he simply means he's a demon now? Either way, Magnus' redemption is not black and white, as some may believe. He's not just this tragic hero who never got his shot at redemption. It's far more ambiguous than that. I do believe, though, that he could go back, depending on his new viewpoint, and he probably stands the best chance of everybody we've covered, although it's still pretty unlikely, and for the sake of GW canon, will still never happen. But it's possible. And there we have it. 9 Primarchs who betrayed the Imperium, all analysed in terms of their possible redemption and return. So how did they do? Well, we have 4 who are definitely out, with no hope. Angron, Fulgrim, Horus, and Lorgar. Mortarion and Curze have a very slim chance, though arguably Mortarion's is almost definitely out. Perturabo has a slightly better chance, but it's getting slimmer all the time, so he's still not got a good shot. Finally, we have Alpharius and Magnus, probably our best hopes at coming back into the Imperium. I think Magnus is the best hope, though it's still unlikely, but if Omegon/Janus, assuming that's true, was somehow able to talk to Alpharius about the whole thing, then that might actually change. So 4 out of 9 hopeless, 2 slim at best, 1 slim, and 2 with a bit of a chance. Not too bad, all things considered. Of course, this is just my opinion on who I think is worthy of redemption. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That's all for today. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions like Izonka, then let me know, and I'll see if I can provide an answer for you in a future video. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Bye for now.